Of Corrales governing body, March 28th, 2023, regular meeting. It's a hybrid meeting, both in person and Zoom. Please turn your phones off or put them on vibrate so you don't disturb any people who are talking. And then stand and join me for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Councilor Miera.
Present.
Councilor Woolman.
Here.
Councilor Knight.
Here.
Councilor Alsobrook.
Here.
Councilor Burkett.
Here.
Councilor Murray.
Yeah, I'm here.
Very good. So has everybody a chance to review the agenda?
Yes.
I need a motion to approve, please, and a second.
So moved.
Second.
So I got a motion from Councilor Woolman and a second Councilor Knight. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? No? Okay, the ayes have it. So now let's move on to Mr. Curry.
Thank you, Mayor, councilors. First thing on my report, as usual, is Tanya. COVID update.
Hello, thank you, Mayor, Council, Administrator Curry. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so let's start with the update for today. For March so far, we've had 14 lab confirmed cases of COVID. Once again, that's only lab confirmed. I know there are more within the village. On February 27th, Sandoval County was averaging 9.8 per 100,000 with a 7.6 positivity rate. As of March 27th, we're at 10.4 with a 10.4 people per 100,000 with a 10.2% positivity rate. Hospitalizations for based on the CDC tracker for 3/2 or 14.86 on a rolling 7-day average. As of last Thursday, we were at 16.71, and that positivity rate had also gone up. We are still green on the transmission map. The whole state of New Mexico had previously been green. We now have one county that is high, which is orange, and 3 counties which are yellow. Sandoval may go to that soon too. Wastewater sampling. Wastewater sampling was definitely going straight up since February 17th. However, the 2 local spots that were going up, one of them quit adding samples to CDC on 3/9 and the other one on 3/21, but they were still going up. Influenza-like illness, which could be any illness that mimics influenza, coughing, sneezing. So that's COVID, influenza, flu itself, influenza, human metapneumovirus, several others, RSV. We are still a state that is high. We are one of the only states that are high, and Sandoval and Bernalillo County are definitely high. The public map, like I said, is green for Sandoval County. The healthcare map for Sandoval County went from substantial to high on last Thursday as well. XBB is our dominant variant that have shown up in testing. So just be careful out there. Like I say every time, make sure you get your boosters. The people who are still at most risk are those with immune compromising conditions or health conditions such as obesity, diabetes, asthma, heart disease, and people over 65 are most at risk. So I'll be happy to answer any questions.
So are you giving vaccinations now?
We are, if people can call me, I've got a site open. I've actually got a lot of little kids coming in on the 8th, right after the Easter egg hunt, to get their boosters, because they did just change. When they first gave Pfizer's for 6 months to 5 years old, they got 3 shots of the monovalent, and then they changed it to 2 shots monovalent, 1 shot bivalent. And they just opened for those kids to get a booster of the bivalent. So I have kids coming in. I have a first-time vaccination clinic on Friday, and I actually have people registered for that also.
Good. Any questions? Tanya, thank you very much.
Thank you, Tanya. Melanie, I'm going to ask Melanie to give just a quick update on something that we'll be discussing on a future agenda, but regarding there's been so much interest in counselor pay.
So the guidance that we had heard from council the last time we talked about pay for elected officials was that you'd like us to reach out to the lady who did our compensation analysis for the village staff. So we reached out to Judy Bentley last week and gave her all of the information. I gave her the information that Councilor Waldman had originally gathered, and then the information that the Municipal League had also done on their compensation survey, and then the information that I had gathered. And she's already taken a look at all of it, and she's getting ready to make her recommendations. So we should have a report. She's thinking by the end of the week, this week, with her recommendations for what the pay should be for elected officials.
Thank you. Next thing I want to mention, and again, it's something that's on the agenda tonight, is the interior drain. And just the things that I would emphasize, I think all of you know that this is a project that spans a good portion of all your lifetimes. That's when it started, and it certainly spans a good portion of Doug's lifetime. And so what you see tonight is a product of not only a long period of time, but a lot of cooperation with the Conservancy District and a lot of good work with between our attorney Randy and the folks at the Conservancy District. And I'm just very happy that we're getting to this point, because it's a milestone. And you all should be pleased with yourself that you have the opportunity to give your thoughts on this JPA. On April 12th and 13th, we'll be conducting, Raina and I'll be conducting a budget hearings with our department heads. And she's already sent out the preliminary paperwork for them. The important thing, I think, and of course, this budget will come before you a couple times in the process before it gets to Santa Fe. But last year, we started the concept of having various committees that are connected to various departments also present a budget, just so that they usually have minor expenditures throughout the year. So those are being developed, and those are not going to the department heads presentations. Those will be going to Melanie. So she's collecting all those numbers. And like I said, we don't anticipate large sums of money in these committee budgets, but they are just kind of going along maintenance, odds and ends sort of budgets that we want to hear about it. And if we can plan for it in advance rather than having them pop up on us during the course of the year, that's the idea.
So if we budget their funds, we're not dealing with BARs during the year, and it gives less for the auditors to look at and to find fault with. Yes, sir.
Mayor, thank you. So should they bring you the receipts then to the front desk or to Melanie when they incur these expenses?
Melanie?
So we actually created a form this year for them to submit that budget request ahead of time. But typically, if they have something that needs to be reimbursed, they could let us know and bring receipts. But what we try and do with asking them to budget this ahead of time is being able to go through staff with POs and things like that, so we're not having to reimburse individual residents for these types of expenses. So if we know about them ahead of time, we can make sure we have purchase orders and agreements with any of the areas that they're going to be purchasing from.
Well, I was just thinking that if, say, if one of the committees went out and purchased maybe signage or something like that, would they come back into the village for reimbursement?
So what we're asking them to do with the form that Melanie has put together is give us a budget that they anticipate spending during the course of the year, so that hopefully the signage that they're thinking of getting will be covered, and then they get a purchase order.
Yeah.
And then get it.
Okay.
But typically in the past, I believe that's how they did it, is they asked for the receipts and then we would reimburse the individual resident. But we're trying to move away from that, so we're not writing checks to people.
Thank you.
Try to be a little more organized.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, Ron, I
No, that's fine.
interrupted you. Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah, Mayor, Ron, last year, Councilor Murray raised a couple of issues during the course of the year in terms of budgeting, one of which was for staff salaries and then cost of living. Is there a way that we can anticipate that during the budgetary deliberations prior to the final budget going to Santa Fe? Will we know in advance rather than, again, have this pop up during the year?
Yes, right now, we're not anticipating any increases next year.
Okay.
Anyone else? Okay.
There's been a lot of conversation as of late regarding speed limits in the village. So we've spent a decent amount of time talking to folks and looking at our ordinances. And you can look at our ordinance and it talks about several specific things, whether the road is asphalt or whether it's dirt, and it assigns different speed limits for that. And then generally speaking, if they're asphalt road, that it's a 25-mile speed limit. If it's a dirt road, it's 15. And then it talks about changing speed limits and the process you go through to change a speed limit within the village. And the ordinance states that you have to do an engineering study, either the village or the state DOT. And so we continue to look and trying to define the cost and what a definition of a good engineering study is. And we've seen costs that range between $5,000 and $10,000. We're still looking at that. But one of the interesting things that we learned this afternoon is that, and I'll just read this, is from a person, senior transportation planner with the COG, Mr. COG. And I won't bore you with the entire email, but it says the size, function, classification of the roadway will determine the level of analysis required in the study. Also, coordination with agencies with jurisdictional interest in the roadway must be included. For example, if the roadway of interest is a larger roadway such as Corrales Road, then the New Mexico DOT must be contacted as they are the owner of that roadway. A local roadway under the exclusive jurisdiction of the village of Corrales and not intersecting with any adjacent agency's infrastructure would not require NMDOT participation. So specifically speaking, if this is true and correct, then any roads that connect with Corrales Road would require DOT participation in the engineering study. And so we continue to look at this issue, but I just, I know I've had some phone calls from various constituents around the village, and we're trying to look at it as thoroughly as we can. But that last sentence was kind of a surprise to me. So any road that intersects with Corrales Road has to involve DOT. The last thing I want to mention is I would call in the category of good news in the Gonzales property update. I spoke with Alan this last week, and I spoke with the title company yesterday, and we're down to one now. One of the sisters, we got one more signature. There were two that we needed. We got one sign off, and we're waiting for the other one. And the details of that are, without going too far into the weeds, the administrator of the particular financial aspects of this, it's Alan that speaks for all of the relatives of the Gonzaleses, but then there's an administrator over that. The administrator can control the flow of money. The one outstanding relative and the current administrator are at odds with each other. Rumor has it that administrator may not be there much longer. So that's kind of a ray of sunshine that we're hoping for. But Alan was very excited about the fact that we cut it down to one. And so we continue to move on it. I assured him that, we're standing there with the offer still and there's no strings attached to it.
Yes, John.
Thank you, Mayor and councilors. Just a quick follow-up to the speed limit issue. I'm not sure what has changed, but it might be informative to go back a dozen years, might be a little bit longer. We reduced the speed limit on Applewood. Residents wanted 15, and we reduced it from 25 to 20. I don't know, what the requirements were at that time for notifying DOT, but we didn't spend any money on engineering. We certainly didn't spend thousands and thousands of dollars on that. And Mr. Mayor, I think you were probably on the council at the time too. You might remember.
So I
Not
think
to put
back.
you on the spot.
No, because this is sort of, we've talked about this. I don't believe that the mechanism that Ron is talking about was ever, we didn't even request DOT. We just took care of it here in the village, and basically, you did a survey. And the people, I think, brought in a petition. I know a couple of streets did that. Some we passed and some we didn't. There was a street that's a nice asphalt road that's 15 miles an hour, and the neighbor said we wanted to increase to 25 because that's what the ordinance says. And so he said, get a petition, much probably like we told the people in Applewood, and or the mayor told the people in Applewood. And whether that was right or wrong, we've now got more information because Ron called to ask. And but in that case, it did not change. It was voted down by the council. Even though most of the people wanted the speed limit raised, there were enough people who were very outspoken that swayed the council to vote in opposition to raising the speed limit. Also, I think there was one less counselor, so it required 4 persons to approve it, and only 3 voted for it. So it failed. Yes, Stuart?
Thank you, Mayor and Councilor. So that kind of brings up another follow-up question then. It seems to me that since the road intersects Corrales Road, the only impact is the stop sign. I mean, basically, the traffic has to come to a complete stop before it gets to Corrales Road. I don't see why the DOT has to require an engineering study on something that is probably outside their purview, but can we ask for a waiver from DOT as to the engineering study, because it doesn't impact them at all?
We can ask. The thing that we have to keep in mind is that the engineering study, as it's stated in the ordinance, and I haven't gotten Randy's opinion on this, but it says, I think pretty clearly, that if you're going to change the speed limit, you have to do an engineering study. And if it intersects or is a DOT road, then they require it. And then the other part of that is if it's a regular road that we completely own, the ordinance still says there has to be an engineering study done.
That didn't make a lot of sense, but so the other question I have for you goes back to the Gonzalez property. My understanding is with estate contracts that they are unique in the state. Each one is unique to its property. And we've had this going on for how many months now that we've been waiting for the signature? Is there something that we can write to the holdout, either by a letter from the attorney saying, if you don't complete this contract, we can take you to district court and force the issue? It seems to me that we may have an option. I don't know, but I don't want to do that. I'd rather not do that, but this has gone on way too long, and this contract has been out there for how many months?
It hasn't costed us any money.
I know it
hasn't cost us anything at all. And
this thing's going to hang around, and I'm going to be off the council probably before it even gets signed.
well, we've already approved it. It's done. So all we have to do is write the check for the money.
Yeah, but I'm saying that there's a valid contract out there. It's my impression that the applicants, it has to have I forget what they call it, but there is a portion of that the contract has to be fulfilled. And since one party seems to be holding up everything, they're not holding up their end of the deal. We don't care about who gets what money. We just want to get the property sold and bought.
I don't recall a time limit on our offer. Do you?
No,
There was none.
There is no time limit, and I've
And-
made it clear based on our conversations with the council that we weren't going to place any time limit on it. What my feeling is, Counselor, is that in my conversations with Alan Gonzalez, we don't think that this particular aunt is holding out for more money. She's holding out because of a dispute between herself and the administrator and the way that money would be distributed.
Yeah, Matt, we don't care about that.
Well, we only care about it by the fact that she's the holdout. And, you know, I'm trying to honor Alan's feelings and wishes, and that he's worked hard on the inside of this political family, or this political problem within his family, and literally for years. And so he is still asked for our patience. And at one time during my conversation with him, I asked him point blank, I said, do you need a tough guy letter or something from me or our attorney? And the answer was no. We just asked that we just see if we can let this problem between the administrator and his aunt resolve itself. And he thinks there's a pathway for that happening now.
I don't think this is uncommon among families that maybe aren't close when inheritance is passed down and they fight over the issues and fight over the money. I don't think it's terribly uncommon. And so I don't think we should really get into this. I mean, we've expressed an interest in the land. They've expressed an interest in selling it to us. We have a good price. And I think, my attitude has changed about that piece of property. We have the money. It would be a good thing to have for the village. So I think we need to be patient.
Well, I don't disagree with everything you said. I just think that this is, drug on for so long. I just want to see some resolution, fairly soon.
Yeah, I think we just need to be patient.
Okay.
I think we'll move forward. Yes, sir, Councilor Muir.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just got a quick question. I've been working with the chief police with regards to the speed zones. We're trying to see if we can find an innovative way of maybe some striping or whatever. We're not ready to talk, bring that to you just yet. But my question is that on Corrales Road, each street's got to be done individually, or you can't do it like the entire downtown or the town, middle town, or whatever it might be? Does each one have to go like 5,000 to 10,000 per stop sign per street?
That's my understanding.
That's the way I read the ordinance.
That could get expensive.
Real can of worms.
And to be fair to the discussion, I don't have a specific price from a specific company yet that I could tell you what it's going to cost. I've been given the $5,000 to $10,000 range from 3 different engineers or people who are familiar with the situation at this point.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Yes, Stuart.
One more question. Now, this is aimed at the chief of police, Chief Mangiacopra. In lieu of the events up in Nashville that happened this week, I'm just curious, does the Corrales Police Department have an active shooters training?
Yes.
And plan, and who you partner with?
I didn't mean to answer, but
No problem. You are the chief law enforcement officer of the village, in case anyone didn't know, but mayor and council. Yes, we do. We have a
drills.
strong active shooter policy and do engage in training, use of force training as well, firearms training. Our Sergeant Betts, who's usually with us but not here tonight, takes different people to the range on Saturdays and mornings to engage in that. And then, of course, our partners, our primary partner agencies for the elementary school, it is an APS school. So, obviously they have primary jurisdiction, but we're going to be there first. So we do understand that, and our job is to neutralize a threat, should there be one, or go determine whether or not there is one. And then APS is going to be there, but Sandoval County and Rio Rancho have concurrent jurisdiction in the village. We're all cross commissioned throughout Sandoval County. So they would be here first. And then, of course, we have great working relationships with Albuquerque PD and BCSO as well, should that need arise. And then state police, that they're usually spread out though, away from the metro area, even the ones who are stationed here in the Albuquerque office on Carlisle. So they will be here as well, eventually, to help as they did with the extreme major violent case back in October of 21. But that short answer is yes.
Okay, and then also, then we also can assist Rio Rancho and any adjacent
Definitely,
jurisdictions.
and oftentimes when critical incidents happen, and there hasn't been one in recent history, what we will assist with is to cover their routine calls for service while they are handling the critical incident, the active incident. And, you know, they have the SWAT teams and train together and work together on that. So we would be covering normal routine calls while they are dealing with the incident.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Councilor Burkett?
Can I ask, a quick follow-up before you leave? So I know the elementary school and with their police force, I'm sure they have drills, they have plans. I know you guys have worked with them some. The private schools and the church schools and the daycares, have we done any sort of drills, or do we have any correspondence with them for?
Not recent history, Counselor, and sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
No, you're fine.
Yeah, we did have an officer who was on day shift who left us a few years ago to become a full-time range officer, actually, and he was very proactive in reaching out to them. And my understanding is, and I may have lost something in the interpretation by the time the message got to me, is that they were not interested. So I don't want to speak for any current or past administrations of those private institutions. However, we have reached out. We could certainly make another effort, and, you know, just make sure that we're all on the same page,
Right.
And that the proper protocols are in place, but can't force it on them.
Correct. Well, interest levels may have recently changed.
Yeah.
So.
Sure. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chief.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Any more?
The last thing I have is turning to Randy.
Councilors, mayor, members of the public, we had some good news for the village yesterday. We got a decision from the New Mexico Court of Appeals in the Huff Floor appeal of the subdivision approval with conditions that council had done in 2018. As you'll recall, that was affirmed by the district court, and now the Court of Appeals has affirmed that decision as well and found that there were no due process violations. So good news, there is an opportunity for that to be appealed, of course, to the Supreme Court, but the Supreme Court doesn't have to take that case. It's a matter of, if they wish to, it's on what's called a petition for writ of certiorari. So that's all I have tonight.
Ron? Oh, any questions? You done? So now we'll move on to Corleone's Forum, and this section is for informational purposes only, not for
Did we
discussion or
skip the
debate.
counselors?
I'm sorry, what?
We skipped the counselors forum?
Oh, I thought we were in Councilors Forum. Oh, we were Administrator's Report. Okay, I am terribly sorry. Forgive me. Counselor Knight.
Thank you, Mayor. I just want to let everyone know that I went to the Rio Metro Regional Transit District Board meeting on March 17th. They talked about approving the drug and alcohol policy to set up to the state standards so that we are consistent across the board. They also reviewed their audit, and this is the 12th year in a row that they had a clear audit. And one last thing, they talked about the prices for the Rail Runner are going to be going up again April 3rd, back to pre-COVID prices, but there will be monthly passes because they want to encourage people who work up in Santa Fe to take the Rail Runner. So the next meeting is in April, and I will attend that as well.
Okay. Counselors, anybody else? Yes, sir.
Thank you, Mayor, councilors. Also, on the 17th, we had the Metropolitan Transportation Plan. We have approved the updated public participation procedures. We amended the 2025 TIP second FY 23 cycle. And we also approved the Rio Metro RTD and ABQ transit safety plans. So anyway, we're moving forward.
Counselors, anyone else? Okay, so now we'll move on to Corleone's Forum. And this section is for informational purposes only, not for discussion or debate, to inform the governing body of an issue or concern that would not be addressed on the agenda during the business session. There is a 3-minute time limit. Okay,
First up, Christina, I apologize if I butcher your last name, but Christina Savitsky. You could please state your name and address for the record. You'll have 3 minutes.
Hi, everyone. I'm Christina Savitsky. Brought my husband Ethan with me today. We live on Cabazon Road, which is the first cross section on the south end of town that cuts between Corrales Road and Loma Larga. We run our business there and raise our daughter. And we caught Mr. Chavez out getting ready to repave Cabazon Road. So we came to let you know that we like the potholes because it tries to keep the speed limit down to 25. And there are some pretty good cracks in the road, so I can see why we would want to repave it. But as people who live there and ride horses back and forth and bikes and kids walking and riding, we would actually prefer that it be left alone. I just forgot it. I want to say it's 21, resolution 2118. So it looks like it, we have money from DOT to repave that road, and it looks like the money will expire this coming June. So obviously there's a big push to get this done very quickly, and I can see why we would want to use their money instead of ours. But I don't think that there are speed tables in the plan, and there doesn't seem to be a plan that was presented to the bicycling or pedestrian committee or the Corrales Equestrian Advisory Committee, which I joined so that things like this wouldn't happen. But there's not very good passage right now on that road. It's relatively narrow. There's one good little wiggle that's right between our property and our neighbor's property. Cars go pretty fast through there. We call the police at least once a month personally, just when there seems to be a lot of traffic coming through. And they're awesome. They always come out, and we often have someone parked there, which helps. But whichever side they park on, the cars come flying in and then slow down around that turn. And we don't run trail rides or anything like that, but if I want to ride my personal horses or my board horses who live at our house, and it's not a very safe way to get to the river from there. So just wanted to make you all aware and hope that the committees that you have working for you get a chance to give you some feedback on those plans before anything happens. Thank you.
So let me just remind people that this is for information only and not discussion or debate. It's for items that are not already on the agenda that are going to be discussed tonight. So who's next?
Mr. Kurt Flora. Mr. Flora, if you'd state your name and address for the record, you'll have 3 minutes as well.
For 4560 Andrews Lane. I handed you all this letter, put it in front of you tonight, about Lori Stout's written minutes again, and this time she's included Mr. Black in her falsified written minutes. Mr. Black never did say they are not inadequate, they are summary, okay? She put that in his line as if he said it. He did not say that. That's crazy. It's ludicrous that she can alter what the chair is saying in the written minutes. As to also included in that, I turned in a letter to Mr. Black, to the village office here, that states "for your eyes only" on it. If the letter was not to be given to Mr. Black by any means, because illegal or otherwise, it should have never been opened and returned to me. Apparently, the clerk was advised by the attorney to open the letter. Well, that is what's, obstruction of correspondence legally. I did call the FBI, and they will be investigating that. As for the appeal, As for the appeal, we will appeal again.
Sure you will.
We do have another court date or court coming up. The village has the opportunity right now to settle this. My attorney called Mr. Audio this morning, got no response from Mr. Audio. But they have the opportunity to settle this case and be done with it. We're gonna drop a lot of things. My attorney knows, okay? We're going to actually give the village what they want. But the village is gonna have to give us what we want, okay? That's what's gonna happen. Or we will appeal to the New Mexico Supreme Court and continue this battle with you all this falsifying documents, extorting of money, corruption in this village. You all know what's going on. You sit there with the smirks on your face, okay? You think it's funny. You guys have ruined our lives. My wife and I are talking about divorce now because of this bullshit. Because of this bullshit. 20 years we've been married. 5 of these 20 years, we've been fighting the village.
Okay,
That's your time, Mr. Flora.
have a seat. Anyone else?
Yes, Lou Murphy. Oh, okay.
Oh, you want to talk about the drain? Okay, it'll come up soon.
And that's everyone.
Anybody else? Anybody on Zoom? Nothing?
That's
Okay.
it.
So now we'll move on to the consent agenda. Has everybody had a chance to read our minutes? Do I get a motion to approve the consent agenda in a second?
Motion to, I move to approve the consent agenda.
Second.
So I have a motion from Counselor Alsobrook and a second from Counselor Woolman. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say no. I hear no no's, therefore the ayes have it. Let's move on to new business. Consideration, action, and approval of Proclamation 23-01 proclaiming April 28th, 2023 as Arbor Day in the village of Corrales. Do I have a motion to approve that proclamation?
I move we approve Proclamation 2201.
23,
Oh, on here it says 22.
yeah.
301.
I know we approved it last year and it may not have, somehow it might have been skipped. So I have a motion to approve 2301 from Counselor Knight. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Second from Counselor Burkett. Anybody want to talk about this? Yes, sir. Counselor Murray.
Thank you, Mayor. The only thing comment I want to make sure is that when we talk about planting trees, that we have ordinances within the village to plant the proper ones and not the ones that are invasive.
Correct. This is basically a proclamation that celebrates pretty much a national, so it's a national thing.
Yeah.
And it's been designated as April 28th.
Yeah, I think the issue is that, the invasive species, they suck the
Correct.
water right out of the ground, so we try
Yes.
to avoid that.
Anyone else? Okay. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Those opposed, say no.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? No, nobody opposed. Therefore, proclamation is approved. Consideration, action, and approval of joint powers agreement between the Middle Rio Grande Conservancy District and the Village of Corrales for the Corrales Interior Drain Preserve. Could I get a motion to approve this? And then we'll take comment. Motion and a second.
I'll make the motion, we approve.
I have a motion from Counselor Burkett to approve it, and Counselor Knight is a second. So any of the council want to say anything? And in the audience, we have at least one, two.
Yeah.
I am not Lou.
Oh, I thought Lou was going to come up.
I overrode her. I'm her chairman.
Okay, so we're going to hear from Doug Finley because he's the chairman of the Interior Drain Committee. And he's meaner than she is, too.
And Doug,
Use the microphone because I think you can hear me okay.
no, the people.
You have
at
to use
home-
the microphone 'cause
people
it's
at
on a
home
tape.
Can't hear you, and then the recording won't pick you up, so, sorry.
You're recorded for posterity,
I have good posture.
and we're recording it.
Okay. Well, I would like to thank the feedback. I'd like to thank the council and the administrators of the village and our honorable mayor and all the important people here for letting this idea of mine and the project that we've come up with to continue on. And we've made a huge step here, getting this this joint powers agreement with the MRGCD. It's taken about 3 years maybe or so.
Well, it's more than a year because you guys were formed over a year ago.
Yeah, I guess I'm thinking about the things that have been cooking in my brain for that long, but.
Well, that's been going on 25 years.
Anyway, I want to thank you guys for helping this happen, and it's taken everybody. It's taken the administration and everybody backing it up, and you guys are going to be very proud of what's going to come out of this deal. It's going to be a feather in all of your caps, and it's going to be a jewel of our village when this thing gets done, and however long it takes. And we're looking forward to a lot more cooperation with everybody, because it's going to take a lot more. We've got some money from the state to help us get started, and that's all we got is to get started. And we're going to be looking for more money from however we can get it. We did put in a little request for some budget little items, like we want to have a party and we're thinking about a keg of beer or something. I'm just kidding.
Right. We need a notice of a quorum.
That was my idea, but my committee shut that down. Thanks, Melanie, for all the help you've done. We really appreciate it. But I'd like you guys to know that on April 23rd at 2 o'clock in the community center, we're going to have a open meeting for the public, and we're trying to put on a presentation and answer questions and whatnot. We happen to be lacking of audio visual equipment, and if anybody can come up with something for us to do a presentation on a screen, which we have a slideshow which you guys saw, I want to just redo that thing again for them, for the public. And if I'm missing anything, Lou, want to jump in? Yeah, we're very humbled and honored to have your help. Thank you so much.
Do you have a time for that, April 23rd?
2 o'clock.
2 o'clock?
Yes.
Do you have a time frame as you project forward, how long this might take to complete?
You know, it should have been done last year, and we're going on that time frame. There's no way of telling how these bureaucratic things roll, so I cannot predict anything, and I don't know if anybody can.
Yes, Stuart.
Mayor, thank you, councilors. So in the agreement, maintenance responsibility rests with kind of both parties, it looks like, but if the MRGCD has to come in and do some work, who's going to put it back to the way it was before they start the work? I mean, it's the responsibility, it looks like, of the village to maintain it. But if the MRGCD has to come in, do some maintenance work, are they going to restore it to where it was before?
Well, it's my understanding that that drain is no longer going to ever function again as a drain, and the concept of maintenizing something that's defunct doesn't exist.
But I never say never, because, things change, you never know. But I'm just curious about that particular portion of it. Who would be responsible for maintenance on that ditch if the MRGCD had to come in?
The counselor has, he dealt with all this specific stuff.
Councilor Murray, councilors, and mayor, the way that it usually works between two governments like this is we each own what we cause. And that's the way the agreement is written. We get to go onto the property. We have a license to use it as we wish for the purposes listed underneath within the agreement. And so we will be responsible for maintaining anything that we create. So if any improvements that we do, we'll maintain them. If MRGCD comes in and has to do something specific, they're responsible for that and the maintenance of that issue. And also then if they caused any damage to any of our improvements, they would have to fix that. Just like we'd have to fix anything that we caused with their improvements.
And we can call the ditch bank a trail if we want.
I don't know if I'd go that far.
Yeah, let's slow down a tad.
It's still not a good word to use. Right now, we'll work on that. And also, the other thing is that in there, it says specifically the things that we're allowed to do. And one of those, or two of those things were perhaps putting in a sewer pipe and perhaps putting in a water line. And we can move on those fairly quickly once we have this agreement, as opposed to some possibly going through more paperwork to get them approved.
So we could call it an equestrian access route then?
You probably could, sure. Yes, sir. Who's first? Councilor Waldman.
Just a quick question. I'm curious, there are a couple of times mentioned in the agreement that with the approval of the United States, with the United States involved, how is the federal government at all involved in this?
Department of the Interior owns the land.
Sorry?
Department of the Interior owns it.
And MRGCD manages this for the Department of the Interior?
How would you phrase that relationship?
That's generally a good way to think about it. They have been authorized back in the 1930s to operate the works that were created there by the federal government to control the river. So their relationship is unique. That's why we're doing a license, is because the federal government won't allow a lease to occur. And then, as you saw, the provisions are that it will transfer to the village upon application and approval by the federal government. And if it doesn't, the longest term it can be is 50 years. And there's a allowance in there for renewal with approval of all parties.
So does the Department of Interior have to approve this then?
Their internal process isn't included in the agreement, but they will approve it. But this is their usual course in granting rights to local governments to use parts of their works. So they're not anticipating any problems. I did want you to make sure we don't have control over the State Department of Finance review of this. After we both sign it, it goes to the State Department of Finance. Shouldn't be any issues, but it's one of those things.
Sure. Thank you.
Councilor Alsobrook.
Thank you. That remark actually sort of is prescient for my question, and that is, this commits MRGCD to initiate, do everything necessary to initiate the process for transfer. At what point in the property transfer will the village become liable for any fees?
For what?
Fees, payments, any transfer of funds required, paying clerks, whatever it might be.
The way that Jason phrased it, the manager of MRGCD, was, we do not know how long the United States will take on these. So it would be at that time, after their application and request, before we would be responsible at any time there's a closing, and there will be a divvying up of the costs of that closing. But that's not scheduled, and it may not occur for years.
Right. And so from the discussion so far, would most of the responsibility for those closing fees or other things be our burden and not shared by MRGCD? I mean, they're trying to, get this albatross off their shoulders, right?
Well, it's just something they don't have to deal with.
Exactly.
And we've got a guy here who wants to take it over.
Yeah.
And I don't know if, in fact, let's just say that they did have a huge fee that they were going to charge the village. The village could say no. Correct?
I'm not aware of any fees that we would be responsible for. We're not anticipating any fees.
Yeah, I didn't think so, but just in case.
I'd like to say that we're trying to get them to pay for things.
Sure.
Yes. Oh, no, that's a very good
power to you.
And the state has started. We've gotten some money from Senator McKenna. Anyone else? Does anybody have any questions of Doug?
Thank you again.
Thank you, Doug.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so We have a motion on the floor to approve the joint powers agreement between the Middle Rio Grande Conservancy District and the Village of Corrales. How do you vote? Counselor Miera?
Yes, sir.
Counselor Wallman?
Aye.
Counselor Knight?
Aye.
Counselor Alsobrook?
Aye.
Counselor Burkett?
Aye.
And Counselor Murray?
Aye.
Very good. Consideration action approval of Resolution 23-18, support for the TPF Road Fund application to repave Meadowlark Lane. We heard a little bit about that just previously. This is a $700,000 plus grant. We have to pay 5% or about $37,000. This is to clean up the road and put a pathway adjacent to it. Michael, would you like to make a comment?
Yes, Counselor, Mayor. So this project, I started this probably going on a couple years ago. Last year, we staked all the property corners just because of the lay of the land there. We weren't sure if it would fit. The design started last year. We're about 95% complete. We have that at the contractor getting an estimate. But this will incorporate a 5-foot bike pedestrian trail on the side.
And it will be part of the Mr. Cog bike trail system?
Yes, the 2040 bike pedestrian pathway.
Yeah. Counselor Woolman?
Yes, I have a question for Michael. In your letter to Mr. Sandoval, you reference Sagebrush Drive, and is that perhaps not applicable, or?
No, that's a typo.
Separate money for that from the state, is that correct?
That's a typo. I'll correct that before I send it off.
Okay, okay. Can I ask how that's coming along?
That, we have started design on that. I don't know if you've noticed, we have the right-of-way staked. We should have design complete by, hopefully by the end of the summer. I'd like to start paving that next fall.
That'd be great.
Counselor Knight?
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Mayor. I was wondering, the last council meeting, I think Ron talked about that he was still working with some residents to get the right-of-way. Is that all?
That's on Meadowlark up, that's on West Meadowlark above Loma Larga, west of Loma Larga.
Oh, so is
This is between Loma Larga and Corrales Road.
Oh, okay. Sorry about that.
Counselor Burkett, oh, who's going to go first? Counselor Alsobrook, we'll go down the line.
Thank you, Mayor and councilors. So as I read this, we're actually widening the paved surface of that road, using what I assume is our right of way. Is there any notification required to the residents? And, and just as Councilor Knight mentioned, on the upper West Meadowlark, we've had issues with people had to be told to get their walls back and move things, out of the right of way. Do we anticipate that similar effort here?
No.
No,
Correct me if I'm mistaken, but the answer is no, correct?
correct.
Okay. And the upper part of Meadowlark is another issue. Yeah.
No.
Counselor Burkett?
So my question, I appreciate, is in relation to one of the Corleño's comments earlier, as far as speed bumps and stuff, will we have speed control bumps on this? And then what is the process for roads like this or other roads that we are working on paving to make sure that community input is taken in as far as things such as where they would like speed bumps or concerns they have with that type of stuff?
So what I pretty much do is get with the engineer, and we kind of determine this because, and I don't want to say they interfere, but if 50% would be one way and 50 the other, so we pretty much go by the MUTCD and follow their organization as to what we put in and where on the speed humps. And one thing I will say is we are going to get away from speed humps. We will put in speed tables. I don't know if you've been up Sagebrush, but we did put a couple in on that before the ditch.
Okay, yeah. All right, so those is where they are currently on the road. We're going to replace those with speed tables.
I haven't seen the final design. It's 95%. It went to the engineer, but we'll go do a walkthrough when we put those. We can always add those later.
Okay, and the guidelines for that, I assume, are based off of speed limit and volume of traffic on the road, or just speed limit alone?
So pretty much speed limit.
Okay, so any roads we have that we're repaving that are 25 miles an hour, because isn't that what this is? We would explore putting speed tables on as well?
Yes.
Okay.
Councilor Murray.
Thank you, Mayor, councilors. Yeah, along those lines, I've noticed that there has been an irrigation ditch just east of Loma Larga for a long time. Is that still an active irrigation ditch, and is that going to impede anything that you're doing to that road?
Oh, no, that's actually out of our right of way.
Okay, and so there's sufficient space within the roadway to put the 5-foot trail or pathway as you have stipulated in this?
Bike lane.
Bike lane. So is it going to be a part of the roadway? Is that?
Yeah, it's going to be part of the long-range bikeway system.
Yeah, I know, but is it going to be attached to the pavement itself and not a
You're going to have to
separate?
ask Michael. Michael, can you answer that?
Yes, well, what we're gonna do, the plan is to actually pave the road 2.5 feet wider on either side. And then we'll scoot the center line over and leave a 5-foot pathway.
Okay. Yeah, because let me just make a quick comment, because back on P and Z when I was on that committee, that commission, we had a problem on Metal Arc, especially with property boundaries, because when the current PZA at the time, they weren't sure where the property boundaries were at, because it was, at the time, I think, one time it was just dirt up to the ditch bank, then it got moved over and so forth. So there was some uncertainty as to the property lines along that part of the Metal Arc. So you're really certain then you've done the proper staking, the boundaries and so forth, that you're comfortable with proceeding with the program and the project?
Yes, sir.
The one concern we did have was that area you spoke of. So that is why we staked all the property corners throughout the roadway.
Okay. And nobody's property, or nobody has extensions over inside our right of way then?
We have a couple minor ones, and I think we'll be able to get by without having to move anything.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, sir.
Just really just a comment regarding speed tables and speed humps in the village. It's a double-edged sword for us always putting these in, because we have this issue like we've seen with requests for speed limits to be lowered, because traffic and speeding is an issue on some of our through roads and other roads. But at the same time, this device for traffic calming is a problem for fire apparatus with thousands of gallons of water trying to get somewhere rapidly. So I wish someone somewhere would invent a better way of calming traffic, but it hasn't happened yet.
Those things are considered anytime we do this road work.
Yeah.
Yes, sir, Councilor Mira.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. On that point of traffic calming, you said there's going to be some lines all the way down from start to finish on the road. Just clarifying what I think I heard. So are you going to make the street just a little bit smaller? Because I've been doing a lot of looking around research on that. When you put some traffic lanes or just white straight lines, and you make the people tend to slow down because there's a white lane, or that's what's going to happen all the way down on both sides.
Yes.
Okay, great.
So somehow you got into this without a motion, so I need a motion now to approve resolution number 23-18, support of request for funding from the Transportation Project Fund for Metal Arc Lane, and that's Metal Arc from Loma Larga to Corrales Road.
Mayor, I move we approve the resolution 2318.
Okay, I have a motion to approve the resolution from Councilor Murray. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second from Councilor Woolman. Any further comments?
Just one question, Mayor, if I might, because just for clarification, something got cloudy in my head. We're widening the road by 5 feet. Is the bicycle lane 2.5 feet on each side, or is it 5 feet on one side?
Michael, go ahead.
It will be 5 feet on one side. What we're gonna do is move the center line over.
Is it going to be on the south side of the road?
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you, Mayor.
Yes, sir, Councilor Murray.
Yeah, and my other question was, do we have to design the road then to DOT standards? Is that what, because they're paying for 95% of this?
The design is almost complete. I used the funding from last year's map.
Yeah, but do we design to DOT standards?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, how do you vote, Councilor Murray?
Yes.
Councilor Burkett?
Aye.
Councilor Alsobrook?
Aye.
Councilor Knight?
Aye.
Councilor Woolman?
Aye.
And Councilor Mira?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Find my, shoot, I covered it up. Okay. So now we go to consideration, action, approval of Resolution 23-19, creation of the Comprehensive Plan Committee. I need a motion to approve Resolution 23-19 to form this committee. Our plan is to bring back, well, actually inform you of all the different individuals, 7 individuals that we would put on this committee, and we'll approve those in a couple of weeks,
Next meeting is what we're aiming for. So
like April 11th. That's what we're
11th.
aiming for, okay? But in order to form this committee, we would like to get your approval.
Mayor,
Do I have a motion?
So moved.
I have a motion from Councilor Woolman to approve Resolution 23-19.
Second.
And a second. Did you make the motion, John?
No, Counselor Waldman did.
Oh, okay, he beat you to it.
Yeah.
And a second from Councilor Alsobrook. Does anybody have any further questions? Or, oh, of course, Stuart.
Well, I'm just curious, will we have the ability to install somebody from our own district if there are volunteers that are on the list?
So because of some comments, wondering how we decided, to put people on different committees, we are stressing the fact that every one of these people, which has been the past history anyway, have an application in-house and they're applying for some jobs, and they give us an idea of what their expertise is and their experience. And then you may have 2 or 3 from your district, and you can call them up and say, hey, would you like to serve? If they say they have on their application, then we can just call them up and say, you've been appointed. Okay? Did I answer your question?
Well, not really.
Okay. State it one more time. Perhaps I'll catch it the second time around.
Well, my concern is if I put out a request for volunteers and say we have 5 from my district that go down and make an application out.
You get 1.
Do I get to choose the one?
You can recommend the one.
Yes.
And we will look at all of them, and you can recommend.
And all the names will be present on the 11th then?
Correct. You can recommend. Tell me could you tell him how we sort of arbitrarily put this together?
Yeah.
We want to be fair is the point.
Right. So we're still going to accept applications through March 31st. Deadline is 5 o'clock for anybody that still wants to put in an application. And so, like right now, I think we have 4 from District 6, 3 from District 4, we have several, but then like only 1 from District 1. So we'll have to take a look at all of those and kind of see, who's, I guess, the best qualified from what they've put on their application.
Now, we will bring those back to the council for approval. You'll have a list of names that we've talked to them, we've selected them for the position, and they've said yes, and then you get to approve them. If you don't like the one that we picked, you can certainly object or not vote for that person. But we'll try to get you those names in advance, like at least the Thursday before.
Yeah.
Okay. Yes, sir, Councilor Burkett.
Just 2 follow-up questions on that. I guess it would be difficult to vote for or reject somebody without knowing what the other alternative options were. And what are we looking for? I mean, we're looking for skill sets, but also hopefully for some sort of demographic variability. So we have representation from young families, retirees, people that have been in the village for generations, people that have moved here recently. I mean, I would like to see as broad of a cross-section as possible of all of those things, as well as skills that are useful to the process.
And it is a little hard to judge some of that from the applications because we don't ask for things like age or things like that. But some people do say, under reasons they think that they should be appointed to the committee. I've seen a couple. I've lived in the village for 50 years. So I think people are kind of alerting us to things like that in their applications.
And some of these are people who have been involved in the community and they're interested. And I think those are 2 biggies right there. We'd like to have people who are interested and who've perhaps demonstrated some interest in being involved in activities in the community in Corrales.
Right. I certainly think that's important. I also think having some new viewpoints would not be a terrible thing to have in there as well. Just instead of the same 7 people who volunteered for every committee.
We would like to see younger people because this is an older community and it's going to be changing, and these are the ones we anticipate will be around much longer. Although I'd like to be around much longer, but Counselor Woolman.
Just a quick question. 7 members.
Yes,
Will there be one from each district plus one?
yes.
Okay.
That's 7's what we decide, right?
Yeah, that's what we
Yeah.
put in the resolution.
Thought that's the
And then,
number.
Excuse
me.
I guess what we could do is I could email the applications to each one of the council members for their district, and then they could make a recommendation from those. And then, of course, technically the mayor has the power to appoint, but then you could take a look at all of them, see if you agree.
And I don't want to have 47 people show up for their first get-together, but I would like interested parties to also feel like they are eligible to come, and just like any citizen is allowed in an open meeting to come and perhaps listen and then express an opinion. But we would like to, move this along. It's going to be basically an upgrade of our old comprehensive plan to deal with the things that we see that need to be addressed into the future in at least the next 5 years or so, 5 to 10 years. Hopefully it won't be 10 years. Hopefully it'll be a much shorter period of time because things change quickly. Councilor Knight.
So this committee really will be gathering the information from the survey.
Yes.
So it's not just their opinions, but it's going to have to be from the data that this
Yes.
survey shows.
Yes, and there may be inquiries made, people questioned, we're not going to tell people how to do their job, and sometimes that can get you in trouble, but at the same time, we would like to get some good information that will help us and help the community. Yes, Councilor Woolman.
Mayor Ron, is there an update on the survey, where that stands?
We're still putting the questions together, aren't we?
We're still working on the questions. So Chris Hoover has been helping kind of guide that process. And due to some unforeseen circumstances, we weren't able to meet last week. She's been kind of out of touch for the last couple of days. So we're supposed to chat tomorrow and kind of move forward on that. We do want to get the council's opinion on some kind of key points, like our areas of focus. So we've identified sort of 4 areas that we feel are need the most updating and are the most important for us to focus on with this survey. And that's kind of, we want to make sure that the council agrees that those are the areas of focus for this survey.
Yes, sir.
My phone was stolen.
No, I didn't mention that. You want to say something?
Well, just a couple of things in context, because we started talking here in this forum well over a year ago about the comprehensive plan light. And as we moved into the actual initiation of all this, we decided to take a couple steps back and get more organized, so that the last time this was done, it took 31 months. And so we felt by getting a little more organized with what we wanted to see, we would hopefully cut it down to a year from the time that we actually formed this committee. That's kind of our goal. And one of the other things that we talked about in this process, aside from what the mayor and Melanie have talked about as far as getting people to the meetings, we're going to have 7 people on here, but I think we also need to consider, like when we were going through chapter 18, we had a couple of people who just kind of said they had something else to do, or they wasn't their bag. So we're going to look at possible having alternatives for people to sit in if somebody officially drops off. But like I said, we just didn't feel comfortable toward the end of last year that we were going to have the most effective process to get this done. And so with the help of Ms. Cooper and a lot of talk between the mayor and I and Melanie on the best way to proceed on this, we think we've got a better plan laid out, and it's going to give us better results in a more timely manner. So
I'd actually like to see it before the next election, so that you guys have the opportunity to actually, put your stamp of approval on it before we have to have an election. Is anybody speaking from the audience, Melanie? Okay.
I think so.
So how do you vote, Councilor Mira?
Yes, sir.
Mayor?
Oh, no, we're done with the speed limit. We have, Corrales Road isn't entered into any of the discussion here, other than repair of the road. Yeah, sure. And we don't control the speed limit on Corrales Road.
Because the state owns it. We can't do it because the state owns it.
Councilor Wellman, how do you vote?
Aye.
Councilor Knight?
Aye.
Councilor Alsabrook?
Aye.
Councilor Burkett?
Aye.
Councilor Murray?
Aye.
So Resolution 23-19, creating a comprehensive plan committee is approved. Now we'll briefly, hopefully briefly, discuss and consider a future action regarding municipal officer elections for the village of Corrales. And who wants to talk? Councilor Murray.
Thank you, Mayor, councilors. Some of the grassroots information I've gotten back that I put out about the election cycle either being moved up or set back or keeping it the same, people seem to think they want to keep it the same. They like the idea of our village being unique in its own election. They're not really too happy with being lumped in with another odd election cycle, but the general consensus I've gotten from several people is they want to keep it the way it is, and I concur.
Anyone else? Councilor Knight?
I was asked by a constituent about the percentage that we would have to spend, like if it was $13,000 versus our budget. And you know, to me, spending any money that we don't have to is something that we all need to think about. But when she brought it up that way and said about the percentage of our budget, it is a small portion of it.
Well, it's not only the percentage of the money that we spend on the budget, it's the time it's allocated by our employees. They have a limited amount of time to get things done, and it's going to be better this year because we now have Ms. DeVivi, who is our deputy clerk, who can also help with the election, but it does impact their ability to do their job, and we can pass it off to a place that is more set up to do that, you know, if we decide to do that.
And I was also asked, I think Melanie mentioned last time when she was explaining how it would work, that there were 6 municipalities that were asked to change their voting times, and only like 1 or 2 decided to do it. Do you know why the other ones didn't want to?
Well, this is an option that's been available to all municipalities in the state since they made changes to the election code. I want to say it was in 2019, like it might have been before that. I don't know, Randy, if you remember when the change.
I think it was 19.
Yeah, I think it was 2019. So this has been an option for municipalities since then. And a lot of municipalities say exactly what Councilor Murray mentioned, is they want to maintain their uniqueness of their community. They want to maintain the control of their election. So that's the main thing that, you know, I did talk to the village of Los Ranchos. They opted in. So they've done 1 election, opted in. Obviously, they're not in the same county, but they went from having a voter turnout of 200 people at their local election to over 1,000 at the next one that was where they opted in. The village of Peralta, they opted in, same thing. They've now done 1 election on their own, 1 election opted in. Again, I realize they are not Sandoval County, but they also saw a rise in voter turnout, and their clerk is extremely happy with moving the election, mostly because of what the mayor said, is it is hard on the smaller municipalities for the clerk to be responsible for that.
And we have to set aside a place that stays locked up with no access, secure.
Yes.
And it gets to be a bit of a problem when you have a small community and a small administrative complex. And but you know, anyone else? Councilor,
could I just say a
oh
couple
yes,
things?
go ahead.
The biggest problem with small municipalities running elections, it's nice because it's ours, but the problem is you have so few people doing so many things. So for the period of starting with early voting, prepping for the election, and then early voting, you're taking key employees who administer our personnel policies, who administer our money that's coming in the door daily and getting it to the right places, who administer our IPRA program. They're all really spread thin for that election period. So it's not, the biggest issue I see is purely logistics, because these folks have really full days, not during elections. So you add a lot to their plate. I was a clerk in the city of Albuquerque for 2 years in an interim position while I was still an attorney, but it was harder than my job as an attorney. It is not easy work because there's very few of you and you have to cover a ton of bases. If you get a lot of IPRAs during that same period, you're having a real problem. So just, that's something to think about.
Yes, sir. Councilor Alsenberg.
Just curious, is there anything preventing the use of experienced seasonal consultants, on our election cycles to just bring in a temporary additional headcount? Obviously someone who'd be qualified, not just anybody answering a want ad, but I'm just wondering if that's a possibility as a backstop to.
Are you talking about to run the election or to cover the clerk's duties in the interim?
Either one.
So we could bring in an election board to run the actual voting, but it would have to be at least 3 people every single day. So you're looking at an additional $600 per day during early voting. And that does add up because early voting, I think, is about
How long is early voting?
19, 20 days, something like that.
It's usually 13. I mean, when I've done it before for the county.
So it gets to be
so that-
pricey.
For the actual clerks, so the way it works is early voting starts in the clerk's office 1 month prior to the actual election day. And that can only be done in the clerk's office. So that initial 10 days can't be done somewhere else. And then the 2 Saturdays before election day, the convenience centers can open up. And that's the 12 days, I think, that you're referring to. So we could open up a secondary location, but then we'd still have to have the voting location in the clerk's office. And so to have the 2 places, we would have to get additional laptops and tabulators and voting machines. And each one of those is about $1,000 a piece. So for each one of those things, yes, the options are there, but it's going to cost us more money.
So really, if we were to maintain what we do now, the solution might be to try to find help for non-election related matters in your office for the period of time. And obviously, you can't just drop someone in. This is a
Would you like for the
knowledge worker position that requires, background and training.
I can say, as Randy brought up, the IPRA requests, those have to be responded to within 3 days. And those were a big, I was doing those at night from my home last year. So those were the biggest challenge, is making sure that we weren't dropping the ball on those.
Would you like to direct the administration to give you a sample budget of what it might cost for us to run the election versus what it might, can we do that? What it might cost for the county to do that?
Yeah.
So you could have that comparison. It's just to give you the money cost. And then I think as part of that, Melanie could very easily give you an idea of the amount of hours involved in doing that, plus her regular job.
And perhaps include in the estimate what it would be for us to have a half-time deputy clerk.
Sergeant clerk.
Yeah.
Mayor, also, it seems like to me that the last election cycle, the voting was actually not taking place in her office. So is it the definition of the clerk office?
It's
It's
the
just
same-
a office dedicated within the administration building?
It has to be in the physical same building as the clerk's office.
Okay, so it's not really physically in your office.
Right, but it has to be
It could be
in,
an empty office within the administration
yes,
building.
it has to be in that building. So, because I asked last year, I said, can we move it over to the community center where we have more space? And they said no, because it's considered a separate building from the administration.
You know,
has.
we've done that, you know, they used that community center for a number of years. And I remember voting in there, but it seems like, you know, they were putting more and more requiremements on it, trying to make it tougher on us as it is for being independent.
Well, and I did have a lengthy talk with Tina Dominguez, who is our deputy, or our elections clerk for the county, and former clerk here in Corrales. And she said, actually, that the community center is not big enough for the voting in November. So they would like us to find a bigger space for them. Where that is, I don't know. So yeah, so even just for the early voting in November, they would like more space than what we can provide. So.
Councilor Burkett?
I mean, in my mind, if we're just balancing the logistical and financial challenges of this versus kind of, I mean, I think most people in the village prefer to have our own elections. They can really engage in the bonds, they can really engage in the candidates and find out what they like.
It'll still be the same candidates, same type of stuff that's done before. In the bond election, we can decide when, we can actually do that during the general election and on the even years.
Right. I just think all of that, the more they have to vote on the day of the election, the less time and energy they can put into any piece of it. And I know there's a portion of our population here that really likes the fact that they can get to know all the candidates running for village council and mayor and all the bonds. And yeah, so I mean, I do see the logistical challenges for sure, and it's great to save some money when we can, but we want to make sure also that we have as many engaged voters as possible. I mean, we want to ramp up the numbers, but we want them all to actually know what they're voting on as well. And if there's too many things on the ballot, that gets more and more complicated.
Okay. Anyone else? So no direction for the administration?
I thought you were kind of quietly making a motion.
No, we're not going to make a motion. I'm just asking you to, do you guys want to direct the administration to give you more information?
Well, certainly.
And would you like to, we can incorporate that, I guess we could incorporate that into a resolution. So would it be a resolution? If we want to change, or it has to be an ordinance?
It has to be an ordinance if we wanted to opt in.
Part of the work study.
And we'd have to put it on the agenda for next time around for the vote. So we'd have to do that.
Oh, no, you could just.
It's just discussion.
I think the idea with the way we put it on the agenda tonight is that we could
Okay.
put it on a future agenda for actual discussion of whether or not to opt in, and that would give us plenty of time to let the public know to get public comment.
So we will collect some information, both for and against, or, you know, keeping it the same way as opposed to, you know, changing the dates or changing the election. And whether we do it in this one, 23 or 25, it won't change any. I mean, it'll be probably pretty much the same. I'm anticipating that at some point in time, they're just going to tell us, you got to do it. You know, you just have to join. Okay. Next, we'll go on to commission appointments. Jordan Cantrell for the Bicycle Pedestrian Advisory Commission and Stephanie Dingravel, I hope I said that right, Parks and Recreation Commission.
You here?
I don't think so.
They're not.
Are those people here by any chance, either one? Okay, I guess not. All right. Do I have a motion to approve?
So moved.
I have a motion from Councilor Burkett to approve and a second, I guess, from Councilor Knight. Or did you want to talk?
For the Jordan, it says that there's no open positions at this time on.
Oh, that's from 22. He applied early
He applied back
and
in
now there's a
December.
motion, now there's an opening.
There is an opening. Okay, that's what I'm saying. Okay.
We had a
Then I
resignation.
second it.
Okay, and we have a second from Councilor Knight. Anybody want to say anything? Anybody have any comments? Do they know him? Do they want to speak for him? Yes.
I know Miss Dingravel, and I think she'll be great. She has 2 young kids in the village. She's very involved in the elementary school. I think she'll be a nice addition to Parks and Rec.
Okay.
Just great that people are willing to step up still.
Oh, yes.
It's just great.
Yes. All right. So how do you vote, Councilor Murray?
Yes.
Councilor Burkett?
Aye.
Councilor Alsobrook?
Aye.
Councilor Knight?
Aye.
Councilor Woolman?
Aye.
And Councilor Miera?
Yes, sir.
So we've put together a list here of some future agenda items. If you had a chance to look at them, is there anything you would wish to add for us to evaluate and perhaps plan at some point. Some of them have already got a date planned. Now, don't we have the ACE committee coming for a presentation on the 11th?
That is correct.
Okay, so the ACE committee will be here. And there will also be a plan to discuss compensation of elected officials. And we have not yet, have we set up a date for the work study on the parking lot?
No, so the communication we had is that we would like Amy Bell and Angela Gutierrez to be in attendance for that. The only time those two ladies are both available is the last week of April, either that Monday, Wednesday, or Thursday, which is the same week as our council meeting that week. So they can't do it prior to the meeting the 25th. So if we want them in attendance, we'll either need to do it one of those days or look at some dates in May.
Or maybe the next month.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Well, we will look into that and get more information and pass it on to you guys. All right, since the business of the village has been completed and the agenda is completed. Yes, sir, John.
Just under announcements, future agenda items, I'm sorry to be.
I'm sorry, what?
Under the possible future agendas, agenda items, I think we might anticipate having to do a formal consideration for the speed limit, just if we get more information on that, because I think the folks on West Lawn Trot are going to come back to us with a petition. Yeah.
So this is for increasing the speed limit? It's already.
They want to lower it.
They want to lower it.
You want to lower a speed limit in the village of Krause?
They want to lower
on an improved road.
On what?
On an improved road.
That's what they're telling me, and that they've got, something like half the folks on the street who could.
Define improved.
Paved.
Okay. Yes, sir, Councilwoman.
Mayor, Ron, I'm wondering why this 2009 survey on addresses was included in our packet.
Yes. The addressing
This is
analysis
15
that you asked me to
17
put in.
pages.
Say what again?
Village of Corrales Addressing Analysis, Spatial Data Research, Inc. of October 5th.
Oh, gosh, I forgot to bring that up. Oh, gosh. Okay, so a few years ago, 2009, there was a study done. And Anthony, you want to talk more about that? Okay. And it at that time, just think about it, that's what, 13, 14 years ago, there was an 11% error in addresses, street or numbers in the village. So it means these guys can't find you. They pull you up on the computer screen, the GPS, whatever, and they don't know where you are. And I mean, it happened, I think, to Mr. Flora with his situation, his emergency. Go ahead. You go ahead and talk about it.
Did it turn off? Here.
Okay. Mayor, Council, Mayor, thank you for allowing me this opportunity to address this. As you can see before you, you have a study that was performed in 2009, which was funded by I believe, the New Mexico State E911 system through collaboration with the Regional Dispatch Center, which receives your 911 calls as citizens of Corrales, and they process it, and then they dispatch the appropriate authority. There was a lot of discrepancies when it comes down to addresses and roads. We, as you know, have a lot of public roads, private roads. We have, and you look at the study, I'm not going to try to repeat this and be redundant, but we have some issues. And this study in 2009 identified some of this. It's been a work in progress. It's time to maybe, at least have the discussion how we can move forward. We still have incidences, pertaining to the fire and medical response where we get dispatched to house numbers. I know the Planning and Zoning administration here has done a really good part with leadership of the administration to develop, ordinances for address signs. I was hoping to pull up some of that data for you tonight, but I can assure you we are selling a lot of address signs at the village offices. We're making the posts ourselves at the fire department. This is part of this study. We felt the need. We try to do our in-kind and try to advise the citizens. If we go to a call, we have a hard time finding their address. We try to tell them, please get an address sign, post it close to the road. We have a lot of old addresses in Corrales where at one time they had a driveway off of Corrales Road that went for 2 miles down towards the river. Well, then that road turned into a different road and they called it whatever road, I'll use Nobles. Nobles is fresh in my mind. At the end of Nobles, we have a Corrales Road address at the very end of Nobles. And, I hear it all the time too, Chief, you guys are lost. I saw your truck go one way and they come back and it's like, yes, because we can't find the house number. We get dispatched to a certain number. It's not in order. It's on the wrong side of the road. So this addresses a lot of those issues. And I look forward in the future to have further discussion with you, the police, zoning, how we can come up to some sort of resolution to take it to the next level and try to fix some of our issues. I hope that covers everything.
Mayor, this is Councilor Murray.
Yes.
So my understanding too, at one point, not too long ago, we were working with the Sandoval County folks with GIS to identify these non-address properties. I was just wondering, is that in the study or was that in addition to?
So Mayor, Councilor, yes, it started with this study, and I believe in, I just had this date in my mind. It was like 2017. The Planning and Zoning hired a consultant, I believe through UNM, that took this study and identified other GIS points and roads with no names. And it just and they actually developed, I don't think that was part of your packet, but they developed.
No, this was basically for information, just
Yeah.
for information.
And they developed a sample village ordinance, address ordinance in 2017. So again, we'd like to take it to the next level and see what we could do to fix some of our issues. In the study, there's things that they suggest that are intimate, right? That we need to address soon because of health and safety. And then, if we could look at a phased approach and then so on.
This was something Anthony brought to my attention, 2009, thinking this is not a good thing. And so I asked Planning and Zoning to start because they have apparently been identifying a lot of these places. And I asked them to start to try to come up with some kind of a protocol when this does come up, that we just don't say, you need to do this. We need to help people because it can be expensive, when you have to change your address or change what street you're on. And it's apparently becoming a bigger problem because in 2009, there's 11% of the population, 11% of the homes were identified as being incorrect. And I think it's all over Sandoval County, and it's something, I wasn't that aware of it. And in 2009, I was a member of the council. It just wasn't something we talked about. So we need to talk about it. It's not something that's up for a lot of debate and discussion tonight, but it was mostly for information to introduce it to everyone so you sort of know the kinds of things that we're looking at and the job that our fire chief is doing to try to make us all safe.
So
Yes,
can
sir.
we get a copy of the GIS or the GIS plan with the sample ordinance then? I don't think you said it was included in our packet.
No.
The sample ordinance is in here.
Is it? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So whatever I have provided to the clerk, and I'm sure we could provide that in future meetings.
So we will put it on a future agenda then. That's you guys. So read through this. It's really some good information. And as you drive around, kind of look at some of these. Anyway, it's fascinating to me that as many as that would be almost 400 homes. Yeah. Yes, sir. Councilor Mira.
Thank you. You kind of said it there at the very end, is, being one of the newer guys on the council here, I was doing my door knocking and I found that out to be prevalent. especially in my area up there, there's a lot of new homes and they have a lot of main streets. They also have a lot of cul-de-sacs. And they have a number that doesn't match the other number, where they got a 43 and they got a 4206, all in the same plat. The reason I bring it up is because from our own perspective, I just don't know. I had the same problem in Albuquerque. We had Bernalillo County and City of Albuquerque. They didn't want to put up any signs. And so they said they had somebody else do it. But so the question would be, are we responsible for putting up the other signs on the top?
The street signs?
Yeah, or is that the developer?
I believe that's
So,
us, isn't it?
Street signs, if it's on a public road, and I believe Mike's still on here, public roads, Mike's office is responsible for that, and private that's a good question, I don't know.
Well, that's come I brought up. You don't have to answer it tonight, but I think those are the kind of issues that at least I found when I was door knocking, a lot of that going on. And so, thank you for that.
Again, thank you for the opportunity. As you know, this is something that's, I want to really try to fix. And Mayor, again, I appreciate the opportunity to get this
Absolutely.
on there.
Yes, no, I think, yeah, Anthony's always finding hard jobs for us.
Thank you.
Uh-huh. Okay, well, that sort of does it for tonight. Adjourn the meeting.